Jennifer Lopez is the radiant force of rhythm and resilience, the woman who rose from the humble streets of the Bronx to conquer stages across the world, and from her mesmerizing grace in Selena to the burning rhythms of If You Had My Love and On the Floor. She didn't just sing or dance, she redefined what it means to shine. Not born into luxury but into hardship, once sleeping in dance studios when the world doubted her, building an empire with sweat, tears, and an unshakable faith in the fire within her heart, until she became an admired symbol of self-made triumph. And every note she sings, every step she takes still carries the echo of that Bronx girl who never learned how to give up, even when life shattered her heart again and again, through 4 broken marriages, failures in love, and a loneliness fame could never erase. A crown carved from pain that now, at 56, invites the question, what storms still await the woman who has given everything to love and art? So let us journey through a life overflowing with both triumph and sorrow. And before we begin, don't forget to hit like as a gesture of tribute to the legend who turned every wound into music and every heartbreak into fire, because it's heartbreaking how greatness often grows in places that never believed in it. And yet that's where her fire was born. The Bronx in the 1970s wasn't the city of dreamers. It breathed in smoke and sirens and exhaled songs of survival. Fire hydrants sprayed like fountains for children who couldn't afford amusement parks, and broken glass glittered beneath the trembling yellow glow of streetlights. While in a modest apartment on Castle Hill beneath the hum of subway trains, Jennifer Lynn Lopez took her first breath on July 24, 1969. Her parents, David and Guadalupe, came from Puerto Rico chasing hope, but finding long hours and harder days. Her father repairing computers on night shifts. Her mother switching between teaching and selling Tupperware, holding their world together with quiet faith. Where love lived in that home, but so did the kind of tension born from exhaustion when bills outnumber paychecks and voices fray. 3 daughters sharing one narrow bedroom, whispering dreams into the dark. And in that darkness, a little girl began to move. When the radio played, she danced between hanging laundry that brushed her face like ghosts of a softer life. Her bare feet sliding over cracked linoleum, her reflection flickering in an old mirror already fractured, like the family that owned it, not trying to be famous, trying to be free. At 10, she joined school plays. At 16, she taught dance to younger kids to pay for her own lessons. By 18, the fire inside her was unstoppable, but her mother feared what that fire might cost. Love colliding with fear, one wanting safety, the other the sky, until one night in 1987, words flew too far to take back. "If you're serious, then go," her mother said. And so she stepped out into a rainstorm that seemed to weep for both of them, every drop like the world saying, "Go," taking the subway south across the invisible line between the Bronx and Manhattan, just a few miles apart, yet worlds away. The lights colder, too bright for a girl carrying only hope. Drifting toward Hell's Kitchen, where rent outran dreams, and kindness was rationed like bread. Discovering the Phil Black studio that smelled of sweat, chalk, and second chances, where the rhythm of feet on wood replaced the sound of comfort she'd left behind. She left the smell of home-cooked rice, her sister's laughter, the safety of being someone's child, a door closing and silence taking its place as she carried a duffel bag. A few dollars and a dream that refused to die, yet dreams don't buy dinner. So the first nights she stretched dollars like oxygen, a cup of coffee becoming breakfast and dinner, a slice of bread a luxury. Some days she sold things she no longer needed, a sweater, an old pair of shoes, just to afford subway fare to auditions that never called back. And when there wasn't money for a shared room, the dance studio took her in, becoming shelter and chapel of mirrors and dust, where prayer was movement, days spent cleaning floors, folding towels, teaching beginners for a few coins, nights spent on the wooden floor-turned bed, cold against her skin, lit by the streetlight bleeding through the blinds as laughter and life echoed outside, while she lay half-comforted, half-forgotten, reminded by each hollow sound of what she'd lost and what she refused to surrender. In the corner stood the cracked mirror. She danced before it nightly, not to see her reflection, but to remember she still existed through stomach aches from hunger, feet bleeding through worn shoes, hope dimming like the bulb above, yet never stopping, because giving up meant dying in the same silence she was born into. Sometimes she wondered whether her mother would forgive her or if she'd forgive herself. Yet even in loneliness she prayed, not for fame or wealth, but for one more chance, one more song, one more dance. And years later she'd say, "When I left home I felt both terrified and free. That's the night I became Jennifer Lopez." So while fame would one day find her, she never forgot what it cost: hunger, silence, and the little girl who refused to stop dancing. Holding her own children years later, she finally understood her mother's love, how it can break you to make you stronger, learning that some goodbyes are just love wearing its hardest face. And every pirouette on that cold floor was a promise that she would never stop. The Bronx didn't see her again, but its echo lived in every heartbeat, rhythm, and note. Because sometimes the brightest stars are born in the darkest rooms, and hers was destined to burn forever. Those nights taught her how to keep moving when the world stood still. So by the time the city recognized her steps, she had already mastered the rhythm of survival. Bruises and empty stomachs and quiet prayers shaping someone who could never be broken again. She didn't rise overnight. She clawed upward one rejected audition at a time, waking before sunrise with a body aching from rehearsals and a stomach hollow from skipped meals, wrapping worn shoes in a plastic bag and taking 2 trains and 3 transfers to stand among hundreds chasing the same dream, taller, thinner, lighter, more polished, while she was the Bronx girl with fire in her eyes and nothing left to lose. When next sent most away, she stayed even if her knees shook, even if a director said she wasn't the right look. The first break came not as fame, but as a small paycheck, background dancer for a pop group she'd barely heard of, under blinding lights that burned hotter than missed meals. Money used to pay a week's rent and buy sneakers for the next audition. And when the job ended, so did the certainty of the next meal. She slept on friends' couches or on rehearsal room floors that smelled of dust and sweat, walked Manhattan with a few dollars, pretending she wasn't hungry, so no one saw weakness. Winter winds cutting through a thin jacket, while pride kept her upright. And though nights ended with tears, she never thought of going home. In 1990, persistence carried her to a televised audition for In Living Color, her third try. After 2 earlier no's, and that morning she danced. Not for judges, but for the little girl who trained alone in the Bronx. When they said yes, she didn't celebrate. She exhaled, the job paying barely enough to live, but finally letting her feel seen. Fame still didn't follow, only struggle. So she moved to Los Angeles with everything in one suitcase, a city that greeted her with neon and indifference, where rent was cruel and friends were few. She took small acting roles, worked double shifts, lived in apartments she could barely afford, until the impossible began to turn. In 1997, the girl who once danced for spare change became the face of Selena, a role that changed everything. Before the applause, she had endured years of silence and hunger and prayer in rooms too small for dreams, and she knew every light shining now had been lit by that darkness. The light found her in 1997, fierce, blinding, heavier than imagined, and for the first time, the world wasn't watching her dance. It watched her become. Stepping into the shoes of Selena Quintanilla, the beloved Tejano singer murdered just 2 years earlier, she knew this was stewardship, not mere performance. Critics argued, she's not Mexican, and she's too Bronx, too New York. But the girl who once practiced before a cracked mirror came to honor, not imitate. In the final scene, as she sang Como la Flor, the tears weren't acting, and later she whispered, "It felt like Selena lent me her spirit." Selena grossed over $35 million worldwide and marked a seismic moment as Lopez became the first Latina actress in Hollywood to command a 7-figure film salary. The Bronx child carrying the weight of a culture and not dropping it. Hollywood's doors opened wider. Anaconda and Out of Sight proved she was more than a symbol, and then she returned to music. On the 6, named for the subway line that carried her hopes. sold roughly 8 million copies worldwide, and gave us If You Had My Love and Let's Get Loud, turning her into proof for millions of young Latinas. By 2001, the world watched in awe as J.Lo and The Wedding Planner topped the charts in the same week, a first. But peaks have thin air, 12-hour shoots, 18-hour travel days, interviews that swallowed nights, applause that remained as her breath grew short. I was living the dream, she later admitted, but I didn't know if it was still mine. And in 2003, the fall came like a public knife. Giggly, budgeted near $54 million, returned roughly $7 million, turning a cementing project into a punchline, sending her from omnipresent to questioned overnight. Behind flashes, she trembled, panic attacks, insomnia, hands shaking between takes, the machine she'd fed turning on her. Fame almost killed me, she confessed. Discipline saved me, so she stepped back to heal, trading late-night calls for yoga, caffeine for clean food, frenzy for sleep. Rebirth 2005 was exactly that. Not a chart chase, but a life reclaimed, while her Spanish album, Como Ama Una Mujer, returned her to roots and debuted at #1 on the Billboard Latin chart, proof that coming home can be a triumph. They said I was finished, she smiled quietly, but I was finding my real voice. Time folded as roles shifted, and in 2011, as a judge on American Idol, she reintroduced herself not as a trophy but a teacher. Blunt, warm, wise, while on the floor, stormed global charts to remind the world she could still make it move. Late career choices were deliberate. Hustlers 2019 answered critics with box office justice at about $157 million worldwide, and the best notices of her acting life. Marry Me 2022 found enormous streaming audiences, and The Mother 2023 topped global streaming lists, proving she could anchor new eras. Now in 2025, at 56, she stands at a different summit, not celebrity, but balance. Sleeping 8 hours, training 2, eating simply, protecting the hours that make her human. Her net worth is estimated near $400 million, yet she measures currency differently. My wealth isn't in money, she says. It's in still being able to dance, to love, to begin again. Think of the arc. A girl who left home with a duffel and a few dollars, the same feet that once danced for spare change, now crossing stages known by name. Every album, role and headline paid for in hunger, heartbreak, and sleepless nights, each fall teaching her to stand taller. The Bronx still in her, not the noise, but the fire. Even now, after fortune and storms, she remains the girl who never stopped moving. The world adored the fire, but when lights dimmed and music stopped, what remained was a quieter rhythm the world could not hear, not fame's beat, but a heart that kept breaking and still believed in love. And perhaps everyone has a first love. For Jennifer, his name was David Cruz, met not on a red carpet, but in the halls of Preston High School, when life was homework and borrowed cassette tapes and shy dreams. He wasn't famous or rich, but he looked at her as if she already was somebody. Two teenagers with little but everything in each other. Friday nights on Castle Hill Avenue, splitting a soda because that's all they could afford. Sitting by the river with lights trembling on the water as he said, "You'll be on those billboards one day," and she laughed. "Maybe, but only if you're there with me." For more than 10 years, David Cruz was her constant first dance partner, first believer home, there when she got her first audition and when she failed, whispering, "Keep going, Jen. The world's waiting, not chasing fame, but her happiness, waiting as she disappeared into long hours and late trains, because first love believes time won't change a heartbeat learned by memory. But fame changes more than schedules, and as studios and casting rooms and sleepless rehearsals piled up, distance grew. She orbited a new world of lights and cameras while he stayed quietly working. The girl who danced for him now, dancing for millions. Love breaking not with anger, but with silence. Until after another missed dinner, another argument no one could fix. They knew, life moving fast for her, slower for him, distance becoming habit, and habit becoming goodbye. "I'll always be proud of you. Don't ever stop," he said, and she smiled through the ache. "You were the reason I started." Years passed, she became a star, and he disappeared from the spotlight. Marrying, living, keeping posters folded in a box. Friends saying he followed her career quietly, clipping articles, saving songs, echoes of love without bitterness, only memory. When asked about her past, his name returned gently. He was my first love. We grew up together. He was kind, steady, a good man. And in March 2020, news came quietly. David Cruz had died of heart disease at 51. She learned from an old friend's message, a few words that stopped her world cold. No headline screamed, but Jennifer did. Those who knew her say she went silent, the girl from the Bronx, mourning the boy who believed before anyone else did. Maybe that's how first loves end, not in anger, but eternity, stretching across 10 years, miles, and an unspoken promise that he would always be the one who saw her first. Fame gave her everything, but he gave her the reason to begin, and when lights fade and songs end, in some quiet corner of her heart, he still stands whispering, "Keep going, Jen, the world's waiting." About a year after that first love ended, she tried to believe again. Selena had made her a star. Success loud and loneliness louder, and into that loneliness stepped Ojani Noah, a young Cuban immigrant working as a waiter in Miami. Eyes warm and heart untouched by Hollywood noise. He made her laugh when no one else could, seeing Jennifer, not J-Lo, and for a moment she thought she'd found not the same love, but the same safety. The night before their wedding, she sat among flowers and silence, realizing she wasn't marrying out of joy but fear of the quiet. Yet she went through with it, hoping uncertain love might still save her from solitude. They married quietly in 1997, promises thick in the air. But love born in the shadow of fear rarely survives the light. Ojani adored her, but felt intimidated by premieres. Interviews, that endless parade, he married the woman. The world married the star, until arguments became silence. Silence distance, she chasing stages, and he a normal life. And less than a year later, it was over without scandal or drama. Just the quiet collapse of two good hearts who loved for the wrong reasons. Later, she said softly, "I married for the wrong reason because I didn't want to be alone." A truth born of pain. A marriage that lasted 11 months, but taught a lifetime's lesson that loneliness can't be cured by a ring and comfort isn't connection. After it ended, she poured herself into work, cameras catching smiles, but not silence. Dancing harder and moving faster, as if motion could drown loneliness, but silence waits. And in that fragile in-between, she met Tommy Mottola, a man of power, older, polished, freshly untangled, finding not danger but direction, while he saw youth wrapped in fire. Their connection was smoke and warmth, a comfort between two who understood ambition. More recognition than romance, reflections that fade when light shifts, and when it ended, there were no tears, just the emptiness applause can't fill. "The higher you climb," she said, "the harder it is to find something real." Then 1999 arrived, wearing a diamond watch and a grin. Sean Diddy Combs, magnetic, electric, together a storm of power and passion, equal parts rhythm and risk. They were untouchable to the public. Red carpets, award shows, whispers of royalty. Then the 2000 Grammys and that green Versace dress that was less fabric than destiny. Cameras exploding as she became an icon in a single moment with Diddy beside her, proud and possessive. While the world fell for J-Lo, Jennifer fell into something fragile, champagne dreams and velvet ropes with air too thin. Rumors and flashes and accusations met with silence and hope that love could outlast noise. But fame is a jealous companion, and when trust began to splinter, no song or smile could hold it together. Later she said simply, "It was the first time I was with someone who wasn't faithful. I never caught him. I just knew." A line carrying the ache of a woman learning intuition is its own evidence. By 2001, the storm had passed. Headlines moved on, and she stood not angry or broken, but awake, knowing fame magnifies everything but truth, and that brighter lights make longer shadows. Still she refused bitterness. "I believe in love," she said, "but I've learned to love with my eyes open," and moved forward until after betrayal she needed gentleness and found Chris Judd, a dancer, steady, grounded, kind, who saw a heartbeat, not a headline. They met on Love Don't Cost a Thing in 2001, while she tried to remember who she was beneath glitter. He made her laugh with quiet understanding and taught her to breathe in rhythm instead of noise. And maybe that's why she married him, not out of passion, but peace. Their September 2001 wedding was meant to be sacred, but privacy was a luxury she no longer owned. Cameras lined streets. Helicopters circled, even airspace rented to keep paparazzi at bay, so a celebration felt like a siege. Our wedding was a circus, Chris recalled, and love struggled to stand. Months later, she tried to hold on to quiet, but fame drowned silence, and long nights of rehearsals and press replaced dinners and laughter. He waited by the window under TV flicker as her car lights disappeared later each night. Two good people. One impossible rhythm, until the walls filled with souvenirs instead of memories. Flowers wilted before she smelled them. Gifts sent by assistants instead of words face to face. Every "I miss you" sounding like apology. They never screamed. The silence just grew heavier. Love not gone, but tired, and by June 2002 the dance stopped without bitterness. A soft ache of two who loved in different directions. He asked for nothing more than peace. She made sure comfort replaced regret. "He's an amazing person," she said. "I'll always love him." And he replied, "You can't fight that kind of fame." A short marriage bearing a lifelong lesson. Sometimes love's purpose isn't to last, but to heal what came before, and teach you to leave gently when the music fades. But life changes rhythm without warning, and on the set of Giggly in 2002, Jennifer and Ben Fauna